Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Hello, how is everyone? Hopefully, you guys can see me and hear me. If not, let me know. It is so great to be back again and talking to you guys. I enjoy it. It's amazing. It's this great community that we all have, where we, are eating animal meat to some level, whether it's a full lion diet, which, as I understand it, is strictly meat, water, and salt. And for those who are doing it, fantastic. My hat's off to you. I personally couldn't do it. It's too much for me. And this coming from somebody with an all or nothing mentality, and I mean everything in my life. So, for an example, if I put a load of laundry through to be done, well, then all of a sudden I also have to do all the sheets and pillowcases for all the beds in the house. So our bed, my son's bed, and the spare room. So all of it has to be done or none of it. And I can't just do it. I have to fold it, put it away, like all or nothing, right? As an example. And I've come to realize that it is not serving me well. When I have that mentality, although sometimes that can be good as far as I have to cut out all the carbs or I have to cut out, um, all the processed stuff, all the seed oils. But instead of even thinking back, I didn't do all of that at once. I took my time. I don't know what that is. Sorry. I took my time and I did it gradually. And there are some people out there who can do those things instantly. They don't struggle, it's not an issue. So for them, it's fantastic. But that's not me. And I try to do everything. It's got to be everything all at once or nothing. And I've been like that with other things. If I know, for example, we're running low on certain foods in the house, need more milk for my son for his cereal, whatever the case might be. Well, I have to, for me, it suddenly becomes, oh, well, if I need to do that, I better do it like now, like right this minute and get it done with and sorted, and then it's over. And it becomes this moment of anxiety, which is ridiculous. But that's what happens. And even before coming on today, I couldn't wait to just share my life with you guys and tell you how I'm doing. And I hope you guys are doing well. Please feel free to share what's up with you guys. But what I came to understand is that that approach doesn't work for me long term. If I, the things that were, for example, things that I maybe need to get rid of or give up, some things I can do easily. Other things are more difficult. And I have to be able to roll with the punches, go with the flow a bit better, as it were. So, for example, let's talk coffee, okay? And if you are a coffee drinker, fantastic. You're part of the club. I personally don't think there's anything wrong if you want to include coffee if you are trying to follow a carnivore diet. Nothing at all. Sorry, that's the back end of my spaniel back in the corner there. He wanted to be in here with me, and when I put up the green screen, he inevitably knocks it over. So that's why he's in the background. Um, I am fully aware. Sorry, I talk with my hands. I am fully aware that while there may be some minor benefits to drinking coffee, um, there are a lot of things that are not good about it that are reasons why we probably shouldn't be drinking coffee. However, I also know if we were to have a couple of, maybe even if it's 2 or 3 cups a day, that it is probably going to cause minimal impact for most people. And so if you decide you absolutely want to keep drinking coffee because you enjoy it, go right ahead. There are quite a few people out there who still drink coffee. I know Rob Goodwin who's got a great channel. I just recently subscribed because I saw him in an interview that he did with Bart Kay. And he will have coffee, not 20 to 24 cups, which is what I was doing back at university, which is ridiculously redonkulous. Um, but he enjoys a bit of coffee, no problem. Is it going to be the best for him ultimately? No, and he's aware. But it's also probably going to be, if it's only one or two, maybe in a day, if that, it'll probably be minimal because he's also working out constantly. He's in the gym, he's training people, he's coaching people, he's eating the right foods, he's looking after his health. And so, therefore, the coffee has a minor impact, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I know if someone chooses, for example, let's say to follow the lion diet. Okay, well, lions obviously don't drink coffee, and so they choose to not drink coffee themselves. That's fantastic, whether they do it long term or not. And many of the people doing this approach, like um, say Michaela Peterson and her father Jordan, they don't drink coffee or tea that I'm aware of, and that is because they have had realized it causes them problems, so they've taken it out. I know, and I'm fully aware that too much coffee will set my IBS off, and it will leave me with some inflammation. But I also know that if I try to cut it out, because I went for 2.5, almost 3 days without any coffee, without any caffeine. And it was a good reset. And I think it helped me to see that I was having a problem with feeling this need to drink it consistently, constantly, nonstop. And it became an all or nothing. I have to give it up fully, forever. And I didn't want to, and it didn't work out well. I felt worse when I cut it out that cold turkey. I didn't handle it well. I felt awful. Not at first, okay? That first day, that Sunday afternoon, when I started to try drinking hot water, this is basically not coffee, by the way. This is not coffee. This is decaffeinated tea, and I'll explain in a minute. But I realized first, even though I felt good initially, because for whatever reason, coffee tasted disgusting to me on Sunday. I tried to have a coffee that morning and I forced myself to finish it because, we paid for it. We got it from Starbucks and we paid for it. It tasted awful. And the thought of coffee over the next few days just made me want to be sick. So I don't know. Was that God doing that so I could have a reset? Perhaps. And go, you know what? I need to work on maybe having one a day, make it really, really nice, really good quality that I can enjoy. And other than that, stick to maybe having decaf tea, which honestly is easy for me because I can only do 1 or 2 cups of tea in a day and I'm done. It does not have the same appeal to me. So that made it easier, or sticking with water or whatever. But what I also discovered was it wasn't just the fact of the coffee withdrawal, and there was some, I'm not going to lie, there was some withdrawal. But more than that, what I realized was I also needed to up my fat intake. So I'm mixing 20% beef fat, 20% fat, ground beef, or mince, as we call it here in England and the UK, with 23%. A little bit of 23%, the majority of what I'm eating, 20%, because, as I've realized, not only because, sorry, I'm saying this is a lot. I apologize. What I came to have to understand and accept is that although my body and my digestive tract and system got used to 20% beef fat, even just 3% increase was too much if I ate a lot of it. Because I at one point had a serving that was strictly, oh, hi, Christine. Thanks for joining. My fibro is pretty good today, actually. Thank you for that. Um, there is a bit of aches and pains, but strangely enough, today, well, okay, so I had a coffee yesterday. I was I was craving it, and I went out and got one for myself and my husband, and because at that point I was like, you know what, it's been almost 3 days. I can't do this. I feel awful. My IBS symptoms were actually worse when I stopped the coffee, and maybe it's because I stopped it that quickly. I'm not sure. I know that ultimately, obviously, it would be best if I didn't have coffee at all, of course, because coffee is a relatively recent discovery and didn't exist back when, in the time of our ancestors, they weren't drinking coffee. So, was it part of the ancestral diet like meat was? No. However, I realized I was approaching it in an all or nothing way, and that isn't good for me. I can't do that. I had to gradually get rid of the processed stuff, and I had to get rid of the seed oils and the processed crap and all the sugar, whether it was fruit or refined sugar. I had to do it kind of gradually. I never did it full stop. And I can't do that with coffee either. I can't just suddenly stop it because my body is so used to having at least a bit of coffee in it that if I just cut it out suddenly, I'm going to feel awful. And I did. I felt horrible. I felt nauseous. Not at first, not on that first Sunday, like I shared in my live stream. Um, for whatever reason, I had no desire to have the coffee. It tasted awful to me. And that was the case for the next couple of days. And I personally think that was just God working so that I would take a break and do a reset. And I enjoyed a really nice cappuccino yesterday. Got it exactly the same from Starbucks, just like I ordered it on Sunday. And I actually enjoyed it this time. So I don't know what that was about. But what I realized is that perhaps I need to not approach life with this whole all or nothing mentality. There are so many people out there, so many influencers, so many specialists and what have you that will tell you, well, if you're going to follow this way of eating, here's what you got to do. And you got to cut everything out. Boom. The person I found to be the most trustworthy as far as his information is Professor Bart Kay. And actually, it's crazy, but he himself dealt with fibromyalgia in his past, and he was sharing in one of his recent Q&A sessions that his lovely partner Pim was doing with him. But he had shared that there were times when he couldn't even get out of bed because his fibro was that bad. And I have felt like that. There's a video on my YouTube channel, and it's from, I think it's about almost 3 years ago now. And basically, yeah, it was right before, I'm pretty sure it was right before our first lockdowns here in England and across the UK back in early 2020, I believe is when I recorded it. And it's entitled, Just Because We Don't Complain Doesn't Mean We're Not in Pain. And that's how bad it was for me, where I had a really hard time. I could barely sleep through the night. I really wasn't drinking a whole lot of coffee. I was drinking coffee. I've been drinking coffee my whole adult life. And so that's why part of me is like, well, I was drinking coffee before I had my back injury. I was drinking it through that time. I was drinking it before I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So I don't necessarily think the coffee triggered it or played a part in it, but of course, too much of it, and that's not good. And there was a part of me that just when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which was December of 2015. And, you know, I remember thinking, all the doctor said was, well, you maybe want to watch out for your coffee intake. Be careful of too much sugar for the arthritis because of the inflammation. But other than that, there's not much else we can do. Which, if you guys who are watching have fibromyalgia, you know exactly what I'm referring to. And these, instead of, me being able to accept that decision and try to figure out how to eat better, because I figured I was already eating healthy. What was that? I was eating whole wheat toast. I had with peanut butter and bananas on it. I mean, that's healthy, right? Yeah. No. But nobody could tell me otherwise. And so at that point, I thought, wow, if I'm in this much pain and it's never going to get better, because it had already been 8 months and there was no improvement. They'd given me a cortisol injection in November of 2014. Like, yeah. If you haven't seen my other videos, what happened basically was I think it was one Saturday or Sunday. I was busy, bent over, twisted, pulling clothes out of the dryer, putting them up on the counter because I was getting ready to fold them, trying to get all the laundry done. Sorry, that's my dog destroying an old paper roll, because that's what he does. He's completely nuts, but hey, he's happy. Was all of a sudden, I didn't know at the time what was wrong. I just knew that I was kind of bent in that sort of bent over position like this, and I could not straighten up. I couldn't get up past this point. I was like, if you took a Barbie doll and you folded her at the waist and then she was stuck like that, that was me. There was sharp, agonizing pain on my right side and pain going up the back of my left leg. And I didn't know what had happened. I thought, oh my goodness, I can't. And I was freaked out, of course. And I just remember saying to my husband and my kids, like, I can't straighten up. I can't straighten up. There's something wrong. I don't know what I've done. I cannot straighten up. And I couldn't. And I thought, okay, I'll just take some paracetamol. I'm going to try to sleep. Hopefully I'll feel better when I go to work the next day. No, my right hip was about 2 inches higher than my left hip. Yeah. And I didn't know what to do. I tried a TENS machine. I tried ibuprofen gel. I was taking like probably 3 times the recommended amount of maximum strength ibuprofen. It wasn't helping. Paracetamol and cocodamol weren't helping. And this all, of course, over a bunch of months. And I could hardly walk. And I was still working. I was in agony. And I went and saw an osteopath who kind of like adjusted me and tried to straighten out my hips. But in spite of following the exercises to the letter, the pain in my lower back would not go away. It would not go away. I finally got seen by the doctor who sent me through for an MRI, because I kept saying to my husband, everybody who would listen, it feels like there's a lump right next to right next to the right side of my spine. Turns out that the spongy disc between my L4 and L5, so my lumbar vertebrae, so those vertebrae, the bones in your spine, right? So the ones down at the very bottom of mine, the spongy disc in between them had prolapsed, had bulged out. And it wasn't enough that they were going to do any kind of surgery, because the actual nerve wasn't being impeded or impinged, but it was out far enough that it was causing consistent irritation to the spinal nerve, and it was providing constant irritation and inflammation, as I found out several years later, to my sacroiliac joint, which is the little bone that is just at the end. So at the end of your spine and just before your tailbone is your sacroiliac. And it was the joint connecting that to the hip bone. That was what was irritated and inflamed. And my current rheumatologist has told me since that will probably not ever fully heal, because it's very difficult for that to heal, because that's the bit that allows our spines to move when we sit down, when we stand up, when we walk, when we dance, when we lay down. That's what takes the weight and the pressure. So it's really, really hard for it to heal. Basically, which means I will probably have chronic, what do they call it, musculoskeletal pain, and that will probably never fully go away, is what I've been told. And so after trying physiotherapy and hydrotherapy, having had the cortisol injection, going through occupational therapy, having occupational health give me a shower chair, like a seat that I can use when I sit in the shower, having had care people come in just before COVID. For about a year, I had care people that would come in the morning to help me wash my hair and shower and then dry and get dressed, because I was in so much pain. I could not do it myself. It hurt too much. I was in agony. So that's how bad it was. That is how awful it was. I remember in February of 2016, we moved from Norfolk down to Essex, where we are now. Not in the current bungalow, but the place we were first in for 2 years. Really nice end terrace. So a house at the end of rows. And the bedrooms, of course, were upstairs, but we had a small bathroom on the main floor. And then the main bathroom upstairs with shower and tub and all that was just next to our bedroom. And I don't know what it was necessarily that caused me to feel like I had a very weak bladder. Apparently, it's not that uncommon for people with fibromyalgia, and in particular, lower back injuries. But we actually had to get a commode put in our bedroom, because often when I had the urge I was needing to go to the bathroom constantly, and I was in so much pain just walking a few feet from our bedroom, from the bed to the toilet in the bathroom, which is right beside us, that I often didn't make it. I was often having accidents and leakage. Now, thankfully, that has become a much smaller problem, and we don't need a commode, and I don't need adult diapers anymore. I'm sharing this because that's where I was at with my health. And I was clearly, understandably, I think, filled with anxiety and so much depression, because I felt like all or nothing. If I couldn't be the woman who worked full time and was there for her kids after school and was a participating part of the household and helping out with the cleaning and the laundry and the cooking and all these things, that I had no value. And that was in my mindset. Nowhere does God say that. In fact, I have value whether I can do those things or not. But when Satan gets in with his lies, wow, does he ever get in? I felt like I was of no value. And I tried to push myself when I shouldn't have been, trying to get up and down the stairs, trying to get, helping out, at least do the dishes or helping make dinner, letting the kids try to do the cleaning up. I felt like I still had to do everything. And when I couldn't, when I was stuck having to sit in a chair and read on my Kindle or watch YouTube or watch Netflix, I felt guilty, because somehow I had less value because I couldn't do these things. I felt so much guilt because I couldn't do those things anymore. And yet I know that God allowed these things to happen in my life for a reason. And I'd like to think the reason was because I would eventually find this better way of eating for my mental clarity, for my emotional health and physical health, and especially my spiritual recovery. Because where I was at, it was such a horrible, dark time in my life. And no one ever said to me, Megan, you are not worthy unless you can do all of these things. In fact, I would often get told off by my husband and my kids because I was always trying to do the things I used to do because I felt like all or nothing. If I cannot be who I was before, then I'm nothing. And that just wasn't true. I needed to be someone else. Let me rephrase that. I needed to learn to embrace who I was and enjoy who I was and not keep trying constantly to be somebody else. And it just struck me today. Why was I trying to give up coffee? I mean, really. I mean, I know it's not great for me. It's not great for any of us. But there are so many other things that could be far worse for me. And so, what was my motivation? Was it just because I wanted to say, hey, look, I'm like all these other people who are like super carnivore and I gave up coffee and everything's amazing? Why? You know, I know, I know that it was not part of an ancestral diet and everyone can choose to drink it or not if they will. And so I felt like, okay, I have, like I said already, I know I'm repeating myself. I apologize. I do that sometimes. But why was I motivated? And I thought, well, it's because I need to. But according to who? Because my health, when I stopped to think about where I've come from to now, I've actually made some amazing, amazing improvements. And I give all that glory to God because He created my body, He creates all of us, right? So He designed my body and all of our bodies to be able to heal itself from almost everything if it's given enough time, if it's given enough nourishment. And that's fantastic. And of course, we have physicians, specialists, and general practitioners who are there if we need extra help. There are some things that we need help for. For example, if you develop cancer, I would suggest you see a doctor who is a specialist to get the right kind of treatment if there's treatment available. And I would say, you probably want to cut out, if you're eating it, cut out the processed crap, cut out the refined sugars and the seed oils. Probably will only help you as you go through whether it's chemo or radiation or some other treatment that's out there. That's what I would do is follow what the specialists advise for that sort of thing. But I realized I wasn't listening to myself. I wasn't listening to my own body and the things that had been helping me. It's crazy. For me, it's hard to believe that a year, 2.5 years ago is when, actually longer, um, because I started out paleo very quickly after the first 2 weeks and feeling awful because of all the leafy greens and all that garbage. I found keto, but within a couple of weeks, I would say I had moved straight to carnivore. So by the end of August, I was fully carnivore. And I think by then I had lost close to 20 pounds, um, thereabouts. By the end of May of 2020, I was tipping in at 200 pounds. I'm 5'5". That is far too much weight. A lot of that was water weight, and therefore chronic inflammation was involved and bloating. But there was a fair bit of fat that needed to go too. And regardless, whether it was water weight or not, it was gone. And I started to feel amazing. And by September, I suddenly stopped and realized and went, wow, hang on. I don't feel foggy. Like, I feel like my brain is actually working again. I felt like the intelligence I had before the fibro fog was starting to come back to me. I felt as though I could actually read something and remember it. I could focus on a task and not forget what I was doing. It was amazing, but I didn't realize it right away. And it was fantastic. And I was still drinking coffee, some days more than I should have, because when I had too much, I started to feel nauseous, and I got the shakes and all that sort of thing. I would say never more than 4 cups in a day, which is obviously that's far better than, the 22, 24 I used to drink in university. But as I made my way through the stages of carnivore, and I had some bumps, that first Christmas, I decided, I planned, I am going to enjoy some desserts, but they have to be gluten-free. And my husband found gluten-free shortbread cookies, which they were delicious, but they were still full of sugar and carbs. And I ended up eating 16 of them within a few days, because nobody else was willing to try something without the gluten. That was the shortbread Christmas. And then as soon as that was over, we agreed, yeah, those can't come in the house again, because my husband loves them as well. Not the gluten-free ones, but just in general. And following that, we didn't. And I had a few moments where I might have taken a bite or a taste of a dessert. On my birthday, when I turned 50 this past August, I decided that I was going to have a little bit of the dessert that came with our meal. And of course, I ended up eating most of it, which was a couple of different types of cheese. It was one of those little share plates with, little small slices, because they were so rich. I ended up having most of the chocolate cheesecake and whatever else was on the plate as well. So I have not been perfect. It's reminded me that when it comes to desserts and anything that's got carbs in it, I gotta just say no, because I cannot moderate. It really does have to be an all or nothing with those items. But life isn't an all or nothing. I'm starting to realize that I don't have to, bring all these people into my channel. That's not why I do this, by the way. I'm just sharing because it's so cool to connect with other people. I presume most of you are also people who are Christians or have faith in God. And for those who don't, that's okay. We can still connect, of course, absolutely. That's the amazing thing, is whether you believe in the God of Jesus or not, that's okay. Welcome. I'm glad to have you here. I'm glad for you guys to be a part of the conversation, because, hey, there's room for everybody. There's room for everybody. The one thing that I really appreciate, just thinking about this, about, as I was saying before, a video that Bart K did where he talked about when you transition from whatever you're doing right now to, say, even whether it's low carb, keto, carnivore, lion diet, whichever one you're moving into, you have to do it very, very slowly. For one, because your body needs to adjust. For the other, especially if you've been eating high oxalate foods, the one thing you don't want is massive oxalate dumping because that's just going to make you feel horrible. And then you're not going to keep doing it. So it does not need to be this all or nothing situation. Some things I think you should cut out pretty much right away. And that would be things like breads and pastas and rices and all that stuff. But even if that means, like, let's say you had toast for breakfast, okay, so that just means maybe when you have lunch, you order a burger and you just don't eat the bun. Little steps. I mean, that's what I did. And if we're somewhere and I order the burger, if they send it with the bun, I just put the bun aside, and that helps. But I'm realizing there are some people who can approach life and eating like this as all or nothing, and I can't. I have to do it gradually to get to that point, but that's okay. And I'm realizing, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm not. I don't need to be like anybody else on YouTube. And you know what? The other people who do what they do, they're amazing, and that's what they can do. That's what works for them. And as much as I might say that, there's so many times when I have to remind myself, you know what, Megan, stop. That's what they do. I don't have to do that. Rebecca Heichman, who's amazing, an incredible young woman of faith, she just put up a video recently about doing strength training at home. And to be honest with you, not that I don't think I'll ever be at a point where I can be lifting anything heavy simply because of my back issues. But the exercises she showed can be done without lifting anything, just to build up core strength. And they were very simple. She gave great examples about what position you should be in, making sure you have the right posture and all of that. But her attitude wasn't, okay, you got to do all of this exactly like I do or forget it. No. So my first thought, just to be honest and open with all of you guys, my first thought was, oh, I got to do that like right now. I was out, I had to get some things in town today. And I'm like, oh, well, I got to get special workout clothes. And I'm like, wait, hold on. I already have some leggings I can wear and a sports bra. I've got 3 that I can chuck on, and I've got loads of t-shirts. I don't need anything else. I don't need to go out to the extreme and buy a whole bunch of new gear when I've already got stuff. I already have a yoga mat. In fact, I can use this office because you can kind of see where the dog's laying down, but if I move the chair a bit, I've got more than enough space. And I don't have to do the exercises that she does where lifting something heavy is involved. I can modify. I don't have to go to the nth extreme. There's this happy medium. And that's what I'm finally figuring out for myself is there's a happy medium. I do, now that I've gotten the taste back for the coffee, because honestly, the stuff I had Sunday, and again, I don't know what it was, but it tasted like what I imagine it would be to lick an iron post. Never done it, by the way. I have not done that, but I can kind of imagine what it might taste like, very metallic-y, and ugh. And then I just felt sick and felt like that for the next couple of days. And now I feel fine. And coffee tastes like it's supposed to. But the cool thing was, yesterday, instead of feeling like I've got to have coffee first thing in the morning, I didn't. And when my husband suggested around 2:00, hey, do you want to go grab us each a cup of coffee from Starbucks? Because we have one not far from the house. And I have an electric wheelchair. So I just rode that down, got our coffees, brought them back. And it tasted lovely. And I was able to sip it and just take my time and enjoy it. And I think for me, that's the hardest bit. I want to be able to go, all right, here's what I got to do. I'm going to do it now. I'm going to do it, and it's going to happen, and it's going to be all right away. It's not how our bodies work. It took me time to come to faith in God. It took me time to understand what Jesus did for me. It took me time to study the Bible and become a Christian. And I did that back in 1993. I was 21 at the time. You do the math, but I'll be 51 this coming August. So that's 30 years as a Christian. And it has not been all straight linear progress. Recovery and health and our journeys are not linear. They're full of all kinds of branches and pathways and hills and dales. And sometimes we end up in holes that we got to figure our way out of. And I'm grateful that, to be honest with you, I'm grateful that I had my injury. I wasn't at the time, obviously, but I can look back on it with gratitude, because if it wasn't for that severe injury, I never would have been forced to slow down. I never would have been forced to, at that point, sort of go, you know what? I need to start asking for help from other people. I can't do everything by myself. And although I wasn't close to God at that time, it was as if, instead of having this bright burning light of faith like I feel I have now, it was more like when you light a tea light and it's getting close to the bottom. It's still going, but it's certainly not bright enough. You're not going to want to sit there with a book and read, because the light won't be very good. It's there, but it's pretty low. That was kind of where I was at with God at that point. And that was until, quite honestly, until COVID. And not that I would have asked for COVID and all that happened. However, the fact that we had COVID, God allowed for me to sort of stop and go, you know what? I've got to make changes in my life. I can't keep going the way I am. I feel awful. I've never been this fat in my life. Even when I was pregnant with my second child, I think I got maybe up to about 190 pounds, if that. So I weighed more at the end of May in 2020 than I did during either of my two pregnancies. The only thing I was growing at that point was my adipose fat around all my organs. And I remember going to see the doctor, would have been August of 2019, every year, feeling like, look, I've got all these symptoms. I'm sure my thyroid is an issue. Please, can you do the blood work? Well, your TSH levels are within normal range, and your T4s, they're a bit low, but otherwise you're fine. They wouldn't do anything. But I just remember when I was complaining because I was having such painful bloating. Yes, from the IBS, but just all the weight, all the fat that was building, all the body fat that was building. And I was at the point of, I just, like, I don't know, give me surgery, get rid of the fat. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I can't exercise. I'm in, my back is still injured. I'm in too much pain. What do we do? I don't know. I don't know what to do at this point. It was like an all or nothing. Something's got to happen. And now, or that's it. I don't know. I'm feeling like overwhelmed beyond. And I just remember being sent for a full checkup. And I think I think I had some sort of infection. And they wanted to do an ultrasound to find out if it was what was happening, if I was starting perimenopause, was I dealing with fibroids, what was happening, right, with my ovaries and that type of thing. And As it turned out, my ovaries kind of got pushed around inside because of all the fat that was sitting there. But I just remember feeling horrible because when I went to see the doctor after she got all the results, she said, "Well, actually, it looks as though there's quite a bit of fat in there around your organs, and that's why the ovaries are kind of moving where we wouldn't expect. But otherwise, you're okay. Don't worry about it." And I just felt like, when does that ever happen, right? Who ends up with fat around their section like that? And sorry, just getting a notification. Um, and I think a year passed. I felt bad. I felt anxious. I felt depressed. Um, I felt like my life was beyond control, but I didn't know what to do. I Other than I just wore baggier and baggier clothes. I felt more and more guilty because stuff wouldn't fit, and I just felt like, but I can't change it. Nobody wants to listen. Everyone's telling me my thyroid is fine when I've lost most of my eyebrows. They're slowly growing back. My eyelashes were constantly falling out. My hair was thin and would break off all the time. Um, yeah, all of that. All of those just typical signs. My eyes looked very sunken and my face was always puffy, but apparently everything was fine. I was told, well, maybe you just need to eat less and move more, which clearly did not help. And so I was at the point where I did not know what to do, but I knew I needed to do something because it wouldn't go away. And and then, of course, December of 2019 into January of 2020, everyone, all four of us, had chest infections of some sort, bronchitis or upper respiratory infections. We're pretty sure my husband had COVID at that point. But of course, um, everyone just figured you could only get it if you'd been to China or the Far East, and he hadn't, so he couldn't possibly have it. We've now learned, of course, that that is not the case. But fast forward now to March of 2020, and I finally get it confirmed that yes, in fact, I do have an underactive thyroid. Yes, I have early onset of non alcoholic fatty liver disease because I was eating too much fruit and my liver could no longer cope. And so my triglycerides were through the roof. And the sugar was being converted into fat on my body. So these things I thought were healthy, that we were told was healthy, was causing the problem. But I didn't get any other advice than that. So I carried on eating what I desired the most, which was lots of toast with peanut butter and bananas or peanut butter and jam. Those are my those are my daily foods, and then nothing else. I was trying to restrict again. I was trying my best to not eat anything ever, and that didn't work well because I enjoyed my food too much. Um, I was definitely drinking far too much coffee, you know, probably six or seven cups a day, and I was miserable. My sleep was non-existent at night. I was constantly tossing and turning. The pain was outside of anything I could manage. 2020, we have, of course, lockdowns, and I just kept feeling fatter and fatter, and I could not figure a way out. And then it struck me because I was relying on my own strength. I knew that I definitely had to lose some weight. Now, thankfully, by that point, um, it wasn't a huge trigger for me like it used to be. I was in pain. I was in agony. My fibromyalgia was beyond belief. Like I said, there's an old video of mine that I think I did in either February or March of 2020. Just because we're just because we don't complain does not mean we aren't in pain. And that's true for all of us. We don't want to complain. So we look like we're fine. We might be struggling with back pain or pain in our necks or in our arms and legs, but we don't say anything because we don't look sick. And we'll have good days. Like today is a pretty good day. But if I end up walking around or doing too much, I'll feel it tomorrow. I'll feel it later today. So, Christine, I hope you're doing well. I hope if you're struggling with fibromyalgia that you're okay. Today is a better day. And that was the thing that I found hardest to explain to my husband and my kids. Well, mom, you were making dinner last night and you helped clear the table. So what? Now you suddenly can't move, or you did this, and what? Now you're suddenly feeling not fine. And that's the hardest part, isn't it? Explaining that to somebody else who hasn't been through it. And fortunately, I had been dealing with this now since 2014, so 6 years. And finally, they were starting to understand that, yeah, I can have good moments and other times are really bad. And I can't predict it. And I just have to say, look, I'm in pain. I can't do this right now. And so my family eventually got to see that, oh, I'm doing this because right now I feel okay, but I might not feel okay when I'm done, or I might feel bad tomorrow, or I might be stiff and sore later. And oh, that was my dog snoring. um, the spaniel, that is. And they became very supportive. And I got to a point where I could ask them to help, and they would without any hesitation. Oh, hey, can you pass me the dishes? Or hey, can you put that in the dishwasher? Can you help me with this? Can you clean that? Can you do this bit? I still have a really hard time asking for help. I do have a really hard time asking for help, for assistance, because I don't want to have to accept that I have limitations. So that is for me a work in progress. Um, my mentality of I got to be able to do all of it or none of it's going to happen. I'm working through that, and I'm learning to accept that other people can help me and do just as good a job as I might do, even if I'm not the one doing it. And that I'm learning. My value now comes from the fact that God loves me, and I don't have to do anything for that. I've been forgiven. I became a Christian. I'm saved. So what matters most at the end of the day is that I'm one of God's daughters, and to be honest, that's all I need to know. I don't have to. It's okay if I can't do laundry or I'm feeling sore and I don't want to get up and you know take care of the dog or feed him. At that point, I can say, "Hey, can you?" And actually, my husband's great. He's like, "Oh," he'll ask me, "Oh, could you let the dogs out?" Which I will. And then if I say, "Hey, actually, could you let the dog out?" Sure, and he'll do it because we work as a team. And our older son, who's still here at home, he walks them every day. We don't even have to ask him. He'll take them out. He'll walk them. So I don't feel like I have to worry about trying to walk the dogs whilst I'm in an electric wheelchair. And I wouldn't do it even if I could walk because they pull a bit and I don't want to re-injure my back. But my point being, I realize I don't have to do everything, be everything. It's okay. And that's hard. It's hard to let go of that and to trust. But when I remember that I'm putting my trust in God, it makes it easier. It does. It truly does. And so, not that I wanted for COVID to happen, but when it happened, good came out of it. God allowed for good to come out of it. As a family, because we were in lockdown, we were able to draw closer to each other. We were able to build better relationships, my husband and I, with each other and with our children. But ultimately, we were able to build our own relationships stronger again with God. And now, so it was great. Everything was online. everything was online. So when we were able to start watching church services online with some people we knew who lived in Ottawa, we were able to connect and make new friends. And we got our faith rebuilt up and restored to not only where it was before, but even better, even stronger. Because when you can't meet in person, you have to be able to have that personal relationship with God, because other than with my husband, you couldn't meet with anybody. And yes, there's Zoom and FaceTime and all these things, but let's face it, that got pretty old pretty quick, right? And it's not the same thing. So to be able to have a strong relationship with God, well, that came out of the fact that we were at home. We couldn't go anywhere. We had nobody we could see or get with. And so what are you left with? Either your own thoughts, or you turn to God, or whomever you consider your higher power. Now, I borrow that term from the 12-step programs that I did not create. I did not come up with that. That's from them. But it's true. Whatever you have that is something you believe in that is greater than your own self and abilities, that's what you have left to turn to. And so all of a sudden, this whole my way or the highway, I'm going to do it or die, I'm going to, all or nothing, that mentality, it doesn't work anymore. And actually, for me, that was a good thing, because you know what? It forced me to start looking at my own life, at my own relationship with my husband, and my own relationship with my sons, but most importantly, to reestablish my relationship with God. And you know how, like earlier, I said my faith was like one of those flames of a tea light candle that gets kind of low towards the bottom. Well, now it feels like my faith is like the pilot light that's been lit in a boiler or furnace that cannot easily be blown out, cannot easily go out. So unless you cut off the gas or you completely shut off the furnace or boiler, that flame is not going out anywhere. And that's what I was able to get when I stopped trying to approach life as all or nothing. And I realized when I thought, oh, well, I feel better without all that extra coffee and I needed a reset, that I was going and trying, I was announcing, I've quit, it's over, it doesn't have a hold on me. And to be honest, I don't feel like it does. That reset was fantastic. Why? Because I was able to enjoy one coffee yesterday, and when it was done, I did not feel like I had to have more and I had to go out and get another one. I didn't feel that way. Today I was in town, I was running errands. I stopped in the Costa in town, had a nice cappuccino. I sipped at it. I took about an hour and a half to enjoy it slowly. After, I'd already had a nice full breakfast. I was satiated. I had a mix of that 20% fat and 23% fat beef with my egg yolks and bacon. And do you know what? I felt full. I felt satisfied. I could have easily not had the coffee, sat down and enjoyed it slowly. And when it was done, I felt great. I felt fine. I got a couple of other things done that needed to be done. But other than that, I haven't wanted another one. And so, we'll see. That was today, right? Tomorrow will be tomorrow. But for today, I feel like, yeah, I enjoyed a really nice cappuccino. I'll probably stick with water or or maybe decaf tea. Very, very weak decaf tea, but mostly water. And I feel fine. I don't feel like I've got to put everything into as much coffee as possible, which for me is a massive thing, which is a positive. So why was I trying to quit? Because I felt like enough people in this carnivore, low carb keto space have quit coffee. And I felt like, though nobody told me I had to, I felt like, oh yeah, I guess I have to give it up as well. And so I wasn't doing it because, because I was in immediate health crisis. I wasn't doing it because, oh, yeah, you know what? It's causing me to have heart palpitations or to have dizziness or to black out. I was doing it because I thought, well, that's what everyone says you're supposed to do. So I guess I better. And so therefore, I wasn't doing it for the right reasons. And so I choose for now to have coffee every now and then. Don't know what that's going to look like exactly, but I feel it. I still feel as though I quit. I quit the compulsion of having to have constant amounts of coffee in my body, which I think maybe was because I wasn't quite getting enough fat in my diet. And I've noticed just in the last 2 days, as I've increased the fat a little bit, not dramatically, but I've increased the fat in the meat or so I'm mixing 23% with 20%, just that little bit extra fat. And to be honest with you, I feel so satiated, like even more than beforehand. I don't even want to eat as much. And I haven't had this ravenous desire for coffee, which I don't know, I'd say that's a win. So maybe the reason I was constantly craving the caffeine was, in fact, my body saying, no, no, we don't want this. We'll take it. But what we actually want is a bit more fat. And then we'll feel nice and full. And you probably won't even want the coffee. So far it's worked. We'll see what happens. But in that respect, I think doesn't have to be the case. There are people like Dr. Georgia Ede, who has famously said, no, she still enjoys some coffee and she is a carnivore. Um, you know, Not at the moment, but up until this start of the year, Bart K was drinking a lot of coffee. I don't know if Pim was too. That's his partner who has her own channel on how to quit carbs for the last time. And her videos are really, really cool and lots of great info. Definitely check them both out if you haven't already. But even Rob Goodwin, who I've mentioned, I think at the beginning, says, he himself still enjoys coffee, and yet it hasn't really made a massive impact on him. He's working out constantly and he's eating the right foods, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's the key, right? Now that I've gotten my sense that taste back, I can enjoy a cup of coffee once in a while. And I realized that maybe the key all along was that I probably just needed some more fat. But we'll see. It's day by day. But I'm trying to approach it from the point of view now that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It's got to be all like this or nothing. I don't have to be strict lion diet and that's it. Otherwise, it doesn't count. Because that was kind of where I was headed. But I don't want to do the lion diet. I don't want to eat just beef as in the form of steaks. I don't want that. I want to enjoy lamb and fatty minced beef and egg yolks and bacon and occasionally butter. I want to enjoy all those things. I want to have sausages sometimes. So I don't want to do the lion diet. I think it's great. And if I end up finding out that I do have other sensitivities, then I'll try it. But for right now, I'm doing okay. And that's me, right? People I've never met, I still want to be my struggle is to be a people pleaser, to do and say things so that, oh, yeah, yeah, I agree with them or this and that. Meanwhile, it's not what I want. And that doesn't do me any good. It doesn't. I know that coffee is a plant. Of course it is. It's a bean that we've boiled water over. So is it as bad as eating the coffee beans? Probably not. I don't really know. I just remember as a kid, my dad used to have chocolate covered coffee beans that he would buy for himself as a treat. So like French roast coffee beans covered in dark chocolate. And they were amazing. They were so good. But not that I've eaten those in years. But I'm just saying, it's not as if that's what I'm doing. So There is caffeine, there are oxalates, of course. But I think if that's all I'm having that's an oxalate and everything else is not, then why not? I don't think there's a problem with that. Um, you know, when I woke up this morning, I was feeling kind of a bit stiff and sore, and I certainly had a headache. I don't know if it's because of the change in the weather. I seem to feel like that more when the weather changes. So um, from cold to really hot, or even from warm-ish to really, really cold. And it's been below zero here. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Um, but I do know that every day is a little different. And like any of you guys who have fibromyalgia, you know what I mean, or any sort of chronic pain really, is you just kind of you get to a point where you kind of go, all right, well, I guess this is what I'm going to feel. So might as well get on with life. And you make the best of it. You get used to it. You don't want it like that, but it's kind of like becomes part of life. And the one thing I found today was that, you know what? Um, I've been so fixed on the fact that this is probably as the best I might feel is that I haven't even dared to hope that I might even get better. I don't know if I will. I don't know if that's if God is going to heal my body that way or not. Again, spinal disc injury, um, hard to heal. SI joint injury and irritation, very hard to heal. But then I think back, there was a time where I couldn't even sit in this chair without my neck pillow. And now I can do that for longer stretches. There was a time where um, I couldn't get around the house without two crutches, and I don't need them at all now. And yes, I need to use my electric wheelchair to get into town because walking that kind of distance, anything more than say a couple of meters, and I do start to get a bit achy. But I also know that despite of the pain that's there, it is so much better than what it was 2.5 years ago. And yes, a large part of that is because I lost all that extra weight. I lost the 80 pounds. But along with that, I also lost a lot of inflammation and a lot of bloating. The brain fog is almost completely gone. I feel like I've got a brain again, which is fantastic. And I was drinking coffee through that whole period. And so when I remember that, it's like, you know what? Coffee, not the worst offender. The leafy greens, when I was trying paleo, yes. All the nuts, oh yeah. The things that I knew I couldn't have because of the IBS, for sure. And just recently, I've noticed as I eat a bit more fat slowly and, mix it in with the stuff I'm already eating, so it's a gradual adjustment, I'm having a much easier time digesting it. I tried at one point to eat between 23 and 25% fat because I thought, well, high fat, I got to do high fat. It's all high fat or nothing, right? The mindset. And it was all right when I first ate the 23% fat. Yeah, I felt pretty okay. But by the time I had a huge plate full of the 23, 25% fat for my evening meal, oh my gosh, it was awful. I was in the toilet right away. I felt horrific. I felt bloated. I felt nauseous because I wasn't willing to do it slowly. It had to do all at once, right away, and that's what's going to happen. And I gave up because I was like, nope, can't do it. Got to stick with 20%. And I wasn't willing to give myself the time to adjust slowly like I needed to. So I'm happy to report that although there's a bit of bloating, it's far, far less as I do it slowly, which let's be honest, that's the best way to do it. I was all about the quick fix. I was lucky because the weight came off within that all that weight was off within about 6 months. It's like, holy crap, I can't believe it. I have to go back and look at pictures of myself from 2.5 years ago. And I can barely believe that that was me. And I'm the one, and it's me. I can hardly even believe that was me, but it was. And the reason why I can't believe it is because it's not because this is some magic pill. I tried all these supposed magic pills and potions and drinks and shakes and everything. I tried binging and purging and severe restricting. I was bulimic. I was borderline anorexic when I was younger. All started back when I was 12 or 13. And although I took sort of a break or a pause from that each time I was pregnant, it never really stopped. And it was not until I found safety and satiety through eating animal products. That's what helped me. All of a sudden, my hormones and everything regulated. And my brain went, I had this thought around August. And I remember thinking, this is great, but it's not because of you. You need to get back to God and thank Him. Seriously, that's what I thought. I was like, oh, wow, this is God for sure. That was just a thought in my head. And once the weight came off, of course, I wasn't quite back where I needed to be with God. And I remember having to measure myself several days in a row with a tape measure because I was absolutely positive that now that I've lost all this weight, oh, it's totally going to come back. Of course it is. I was petrified. I was so concerned that the weight was going to come back on. And that's when I realized I can't go back to that old mindset. I cannot go back to those thoughts. I cannot let Satan play those tapes in my head. I can't. I can't do it. And I finally went and stopped and was like, all right, God, you got my attention. Let's talk. Right. And sort of my husband was on sort of a similar journey of faith himself. And then we became members of virtually of a group in Ottawa. And it was great in the sense that they were in Ottawa. We were here. We knew them from years ago, and we were able to connect, get back to a faith community, get back to faith and our relationships with God. And it just made everything better, made us stronger. And I was able to talk to somebody who themselves had disordered eating. And now it wasn't just about, oh, just pray and it'll be gone. It was, okay, well, here are some practical tips. And as I went through and became fully carnivore, and I realized the amazing blessing of the healing of eating meat, it was incredible. And to this day, if anyone asked me, I would swear on eating a carnivorous diet. You know, if you're going to be more keto and include some vegetables, fine. That's your call. If you can handle them, then how lucky are you? Go right ahead, obviously, right? I can't. I love vegetables, and every now and then I really miss them, but mostly not at all. And it's so funny, I was worried that I would never have any sort of variety. And you know what? Thing is, every month we go to the butcher's and we order all of our meals, all the meats for our dinners from the butcher. That's in Ipswich, about 45 minutes away from us. And, they kind of smile because people come in for maybe a week's worth of meals or just for a couple of things. And here we are with like 3 or 4 bags of stuff from the butchers. And it's fantastic. They have their own farm. And so they get the beef and the lamb from themselves or from the nearby farms. And that's great, right? Far superior to supermarket food. But, you know, it's amazing that we've been able to start doing that because the only all or nothing that I want to ever do is I am all in to eat the meats and nothing else, or the animal products, I should say. I do great with egg yolks, not so good with the whites. Occasionally, I can eat a whole cooked egg, um, you know, and bacon on the side, but I find it isn't filling enough for me. And this is all about making sure that we feel satiated, right? Whatever that looks like for you. So somebody who eats several plates full of ribs and beef and whatever, awesome. That's more than I think I could probably eat. Um, and that's just me. But as someone had pointed out, it was probably Bart, might have been Pim, it might have been Rebecca, might have been one of the many, many lovely people that I follow, whether it was Casey Durango from Go Keto with Casey. Um, could have could have been anybody, right? Of any of these people that I quite enjoy following. But one of the things that was pointed out was, look, if you have restricted food to your body for decades, it is going to take more than a few days for your body to start to feel like it's fully nourished. Now, I'm lucky because I was able to figure that I was able to get that sorted early into my low carb to carnivore journey. But the thing I'm realizing is I'm learning to listen to my body, right? As far as this needs a bit more fat. No, this needs a little more protein. But mostly for myself, it's the higher fat because I know that I felt beforehand that I would eat the protein, but then I would often feel hungry after. And so for me, I found that higher fat is is what helped. Sorry, talking with my hands. Hey, right? Um, and what I have found to be the most helpful recently, anyways, sticking with 20%, I tried, they do something here where they mix pork and beef, like you would use in a bolognese, and I would cook that up. And yes, it was more like 23%. But what I realized is it didn't sit with me very well. And I think that was because of the pork. And if you know about this, cool. And I don't mean to be condescending at all. Sorry if you seems like I am, but based on what the pork eats, a lot of what it cannot fully process ends up in its muscle tissues that we later eat. Why? Because it has a single stomach like we do, right? Which is why if you feed it things like lots of corn and grains, the bad stuff that it can't get rid of ends up being absorbed into the tissues. And then we can absorb it when we eat it ourselves. And then if we're sensitive to those things, that can be why we react to pork. Whereas beef and sheep or lambs, same thing, beef, lamb, maybe buffalo, bison, any sort of hooved animal that is a ruminant that is eaten has multiple stomachs and can therefore take all the grasses or cereals that it eats, and through its digestive process in multiple stomachs, it gets converted into delicious muscle and fat that we can then consume. Which is why uh, I don't think has ever been a case of someone being allergic to beef. Um, I do like lamb in small amounts, but honestly, beef is my go-to favorite. And typically the fatty ground mince because it's cheaper and it's tastier and it's more satiating. Now, tonight I'm actually going to be cooking up some sirloin steaks for the three of us. Fry those babies up in lots of butter, and I will do some sauteed onions and mushrooms for the other guys to go with it. And they'll probably have a little bit of lettuce with cucumber as a salad. I don't need that. So I won't be. But this will be a nice occasion where I'll have something slightly different from my usual. And I realized I can do that too. I don't have to just have beef and bacon and eggs. Um, there is variety. And if I was a bit of a better cook and I was a bit more adventurous, I would probably try all kinds of different recipes. I know that Serena Carnivore, who is amazing, you guys, if you don't have access to her YouTube or Instagram, check her out. She's so cool. And I would say, I think it's called Carnivore Revolution, which is something she's doing with another carnivore mom. And they do all kinds of really cool looking recipes. So things you can try if you're so inclined, if you're so interested, if you want to venture out away from, say, frying up ground beef with egg yolks and bacon. But that's just what I'm doing. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? We can all have some variety. We can all enjoy the different things that are available on a carnivorous diet. It doesn't mean if you like to eat poultry that, that's it. Well, then you only eat poultry and avoid the meat. No, not at all. So I'm learning to not try to not have that mentality when it comes to this. And I hope somehow that this has been helpful. And the thing I had to do, and even before I got on here and started to ramble on, which I know I like to do, so thanks for sticking through to the end. So even though I've rambled on a bit, the one thing I've realized is, one, anything I do or don't do, I have to do it based on knowledge that's available. For example, I don't eat processed crap. I don't eat seed oils, no sugars, processed or naturally found, be it fruit, sugarcane, whatever. I don't eat it. I've cut all plants out of my system because I don't digest them very well. In fact, most of us don't, and therefore I don't need them. They're not required. I do typically eat ground beef with bacon and egg yolks. Why? Because I love it. It's satisfying. It tastes awesome. And it's fairly cheap and quick and easy to cook. And that's what I like to do. But somebody else, if they like to eat steaks all the time and they can afford it, fantastic. Go for it. But you can have butter and you're still carnivore. If you want to include some full fat dairy or cream, like perhaps in your coffee, you may, and you are still a carnivorous creature. And if you choose to have coffee, like I will continue to do, but in limited amounts, just for my own mental state and stability, well, you know what? That's okay. You do not need to give in your carnivore card. You don't have to cancel your membership with the group if you are still eating mostly animal meat and animal products. Anything that walked, crawled, ran, swam, or flew is considered carnivore. Some sources are going to be better for you as far as higher fat content, higher satiety levels, and therefore you will need to eat less of them to feel full, which is why I don't eat poultry. I find it dry and I don't find it satisfying. But if you do, that's awesome. Keep going. If you enjoy eating pork, bacon, sausages, pork chops, whatever else, and it doesn't affect you in any way, and you feel satiated and satisfied, please keep going. Don't stop. You don't have to. Enjoy it. For me, again, I stick with meat, but predominantly the very fatty beef, because that's what I love, because that's what satisfies me. I find when I eat higher fat, my headaches that I normally have low grade headaches, and those normally go away when I'm eating that way. Yeah, so that's what I prefer. Other people would prefer to eat things like lamb mostly. Go for it. That's what you enjoy. If that's what you can afford and what you can enjoy, go ahead and eat it. And even if you prefer seafood and fish, which, yes, carnivore technically, you probably need to eat a whole lot of it to feel satiated. hey, it's still better than anything processed, anything packaged, anything tinned, anything frozen. So that works, right? Do whatever you can that you can afford. And I'm not gonna, I realize for myself, I have to stop having this all or nothing mentality. Like, if I can't do all the household chores and look after whatever, uh, then I'm not worthy. Well, that's not true. It's not an all or nothing. And in my faith, all that matters is that I love God and I am working every day to, as a Christian, bring him, please him and bring him glory by being joyful and thankful and grateful and kind and patient. And you know what? I'm not always all those things. I'm a work in progress, as we all are, but it's not all or nothing. It's not as though God says, right, be perfect right now or you're done. That isn't how it works. So why in the world would I try to take my own life that way? Right? If God, who has forgiven me and shows me grace and mercy, takes me not as all or nothing, as a Christian, he takes me and forgives me and loves me in spite of my flaws, in spite of whatever I've done wrong. Well, why would I have all or nothing attitude in life? That wouldn't make sense, right? So trying to have more forgiveness for myself where I need to, and if I need to make changes, I'll make changes. So that's sorry, that's me rambling rambling on. I always appreciate when you guys come on, when you share your comments and your thoughts. I do always have a little bit of soreness, a little bit of pain, but compared to where it was 2.5 years ago, it's almost as if there's none at all. I mean, there is, but it's as if by comparison, there's nothing. So that's progress, which is amazing. And I have to take that because everything we do is about progress, not perfection. We will never achieve perfection. We can aim for it, but the only human who was ever perfect was Jesus. And spoiler alert, it's not me. So that's where we need to be accepting of where we're at and loving and caring. And I say these things hoping to encourage you guys, but also to remind myself, yeah, I got to take my own advice. And just because I can't do weight training or high intensity interval training in my life because of my back, that's okay. I can try out stretches. I can try a bit of yoga. I can, even just little things where I sit on the sofa and I practice lifting my legs up and down. It all plays a part. It all helps build strength and muscle as I eat the way that God always intended, which is the animals, some of their products, and in my case, no plants. If you can handle them, you are truly lucky. But for me, yeah, that's what works, and that's okay. I don't have to, I finally accept that I don't have to be like everybody else. No one else is like me. We're all individuals, we're all unique, and I don't need to be like anyone else. That's good. That's okay. Imagine if everybody was like me. Oh crap, would that be scary? Wow. Seriously. I wouldn't want that. I'm sure you guys wouldn't want that. Isn't it great that we're all different and amazing in our own ways? I like to think so, anyhow. So, guys, it's 5 o'clock, just after 5 o'clock here in Colchester, England, and I am going to be wrapping up now. Thank you all so much for watching my live. Of course, I'll be posting it on YouTube as soon as we're done here. I'll try. I like to come in. It's great, even if we don't get to see each other in person. It's so cool connecting with you guys, and I always appreciate your comments and your questions and your good wishes and your chats and everything else. So keep it up. It's always great to hear from you guys. Seriously, it's amazing. If you want to share the link to the stream with anyone else, please feel free. But I hope to be back here same time tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel, all that kind of stuff. But All the best. Love you guys. And thank you for your support. And I will see you guys in the next live stream. Bye for now.